Hi, everybody, and welcome to ADHD Eavesdrop. Today we have with us Laurie Singer. Laurie is a licensed psychotherapist and board certified behavior analyst who heads the long running Laurie Singer Behavioral Services in Camarillo, California. She and her team utilize an integrated behavior and cognitive therapy strategy to help those facing a wide variety of mental health issues. Laurie's first book, You're Not Crazy, Living with Anxiety, Obsession, and Fetishes, bringing readers into the therapy room via case studies to help them serve as their own therapist. She is also a dedicated endurance athlete, an inductee of the Ventura County Sports Hall of Fame. Laurie has competed in more than 100 marathons, ultra marathons, and Ironman triathlons, along with long distance cycling events. Diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, Laurie's next book, due out in the fall, will explore her near death experiences and tribulations on the bike and the trail as a 66-year-old now grandmother, at the time 64. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you. I always get really excited when I'm reading through and I'm like, oh, I want to hear more about that. Oh, I want to hear more about that. But I always like to start with my guests who have ADHD and are diagnosed with ADHD. I like to hear their diagnosis stories and, their growing up stories and that stuff. So if you don't mind and you'd like to share, I'd love to hear your story.
Well, I'd be happy to share it. It's an interesting, to me, it's an interesting story. I think that, it's interesting in the fact that I had already had my practice when I was licensed and doing well and helping other individuals, young or old, with ADHD. The younger ones, I knew what worked for me. I knew that when I was going to school, once I returned to school, I had already become an athlete. And so as an athlete, what I would do is I would open up my schedule, my planner, and I would map out when my event would take place, whether it was a race or a triathlon. And I would work backwards towards that event, meaning like my training schedule. Okay, I have to swim on this day. I have to put so many miles in on this day. And I applied those techniques to studying. So I had a paper due, let's say at the end of the month. So I blocked out time to work on that paper. Now, in between, what I did was in between studying, I didn't know it, but I was giving myself what's called a sensory break. I didn't know it was a sensory break, but I would work for, let's say, an hour and a half, because that would be my max capacity with my ADHD. And then I would take a break and I would go for a walk, or I would fold laundry, or I would go for a swim. I would do something in between, which now we call a sensory break. And I was able to stay on task. I was able to complete college. I was able to earn, my degrees and have a successful business. Now, if I hadn't had my athletics in my life, I would not have been able to complete these endeavors that I have. Looking back and helping younger people in a classroom setting or at a home setting, meaning face your desk towards a wall, have your desk completely cleared, set yourself up for success. When I was in grade school, was a horrible student. I couldn't sit still. I was always sent to the principal's office. I had to move to another state to graduate high school because I wouldn't have graduated, and I didn't want to disappoint my father. So I went to go live with my aunt because their scoring system was different, and I knew I would have enough credits. So it wasn't until I had sports in my life that I was able to learn how to structure my study skills in order for me to be successful. Today, I still live by the planner, highlighters, sticky notes. All of that is extremely important to me. I could walk into a room looking for something, and if I get thrown off as far as my focus, if my brain starts to think of something else, I'm derailed and I forget what and it's not age related. It's just It's just what I do. And it's funny because even now people will say, you jump from topic to topic, but you can still keep track of what we were talking about the first time. And I say, well, I think it's a gift. I think ADHD is a gift if you learn how to harness it and if you learn how to explain it to other people. Because I did have a friend a couple of years ago, we were traveling, riding our bikes across the United States. And she got very frustrated with me because we roomed together for, a couple of months riding across. And she said, you just don't listen to what I'm saying. And I said, I'm so sorry. It's not that I'm not trying to listen to you, but when you explain something in great length and it takes so long, I lost you. You need to say it like in a short sentence, and I promise I'll grasp it.
Bottom line, that stuff, baby. Right. Oh, so many things you're saying. I'm just like, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh.
So I didn't, and it was interesting because the first time somebody had even mentioned it to me, I'd already been a therapist for, I don't know, maybe close to, going from 5 to 7 years or so. And I was at a board meeting and I was presenting at the meeting. And all of a sudden during the meeting, I said, oh my gosh, look at the size of that squirrel, because a squirrel had gone by the window. And when we left the meeting, one of the clinical psychologists said to me, Laurie, have you ever thought about going on medication? And I said, well, why would I go on medication? And he said, for your ADHD. And I said, ADHD? So I got out the DSM because I have one. I'm licensed to give diagnoses. And my whole family was with me. We were traveling in a car. And I was looking at the diagnosis. I said, oh my gosh, this is me. I fit all the criteria. And they're all like, yeah, Mom, you do. So it was surprising. They could have had a picture of me in the DSM. It's just so strange to have lived with it for so long. And looking back, how I wished that back when I was younger, that they had done something other than send me to the principal's office to get in trouble. Of course I was in trouble. I couldn't sit still. I was a horrible student. My penmanship, you could barely read it. Everything about it was just awful. There were some mentors back there that kind of took me under their wing, so to speak, but they still didn't know how to help me.
So how old were you finally when you diagnosed yourself and then got diagnosed?
Well, it was when he pointed it out. The clinical psychologist was. I was in my 50s, and I was starting to work on my second credential to become a national board. To become national board certified in applied behavioral analysis. And I tried medication. I was actually on Ritalin for probably 5 years. But the problem is, and it was it wasn't the time release where you take it in the morning and then it's all day long.
Uh-huh.
What happened was I would take it Monday through Friday. And the reason why is because I'm an athlete and I would still do high intensity workouts on the weekend, and I could feel the difference. And I'm sure there's other medications where you won't feel the difference. And then I thought to myself, as I got older into my 60s, I thought, you know what? This is who I am. I know how to manage my behavior. I've done this for many years before I had medication. So I went back to not taking my medication and still being successful. I'm not seeing as many clients as I used to. I'm really involved I love doing podcasts, and I am really involved in writing my second book. But, still that takes time management and executive functioning. People with ADHD need to learn executive functioning. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go back and I'm to where I was pre-medication and just figure this out myself. And if people want to be around me, great. And if they don't, I'm okay with it. I guess we get to that point in our lives, when we're older, that we're just like, oh, well, And I'm not saying, I do encourage, and I think that medication would have really helped me as a child. That I do believe. I think that the medication, but you can't just take medication. You have to be taught the executive functioning skills
Mhm.
and daily life skills. Because not only, is it about studying and getting paperwork done for school or for work, it's about completing tasks throughout the day. And
Absolutely.
right. And I think that, that's hard for somebody with ADHD.
Well, and I was a teacher for over 30 years. And
Wow.
I taught special education. And so like you were saying how you were a therapist all this time and you didn't even know. And I was laughing because like I started teaching special education and I was working with kids with ADHD for 30 plus years. And I'm like, I didn't notice it myself. I didn't see it there until like somebody else pointed it out to me. Um, and so actually my psychiatrist pointed it out. She's like, do you think you could use some meds for your ADHD? And
Why would I need that?
I'm like, well, I suppose.
Right. That's what I thought. The same thing. I guess so. I never really thought about it. I
And
think
I do find it helps me a lot. The medication does, but I know it just depends on the person. And
I
I
think it
do,
depends on the bird, and I'm sure I could go back on it if I chose to go back on medication. I could go back on it. I just think for me, where I'm at in my life right now my husband might disagree, but he's used to me. Well, we've been together since I don't even know when, since I was 19. So I think he's kind of used to it by now. I don't. I don't know. I suppose I could go, but I know how to rein myself in most of the time. Um, but
yeah.
it's
And for
it's
for
not
me, it's
easy.
just I enjoy not feeling like I'm have like an electric because when I don't take my meds, I feel like I have like this little buzz that goes through my body all the time. I feel like I'm charged, like electrically charged, and that allows that charge to go down for me. So for me is like, yeah, it just kind of takes away because otherwise I'm like
Yeah. Yes. Well, there's that part. I know a lot of people say, look at Lori. She's got so much energy. She's just got so much energy. And a lot of times I'll say, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. I think don't you think so? Do you agree?
Well, and what I was going to say is like I have tons of energy when it comes to things I'm interested in. But if I'm not interested in them, I don't have much energy for them.
I think that's true to be said about a lot of different people, though. It's hard to try and get yourself to do something that you aren't interested in, and that's why we're fortunate that we really enjoy doing what we're doing. I think that was key. Like you were a teacher for 30 years and you were probably extremely good at it because you enjoyed it. And I think on some level, that you could relate to individuals in your classroom and you knew what worked for you, even though you didn't have the diagnosis then. And that's the way that I felt like I have empathy towards these people. And I want them to think that whatever diagnosis they have, whether it's being on the spectrum or ADHD or ADD, whatever the case may be, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it really isn't. You just have to know what it is and how to make it work for you because there's so many advantages that people in our situation can't complete the amount of things that we do because we have this gift.
Hmm. Yeah, when I left my job, they hired three people to replace me. Not all at once. They hired one and they were like, wow, she was doing a lot. Let's hire another.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what it is you do now.
As far as in regards to,
Because you said you do a lot of podcasts. Do you still do your athletics? Do you still practice with your medical?
I do. So, like this morning, I biked 50 miles this morning. I went out and biked. I'm actually getting ready for a hike across Switzerland. So I'm gonna, hike across Switzerland, and then once that ends, I can't remember how many mile it is because I don't pay attention to how many miles it is. But I do know that it's like, 2.5 weeks. We end the trip, and then we rented bikes, and we're gonna ride 106 miles around Lake Geneva. So I'm actually training for that. I do still have clients. I don't have many clients, but I do have clients. For example, I had a family contact me recently. I used to work with their daughter when she was 6 years old. She had extreme anxiety. Now it's 6 years later. She's 12 years old. She came to my office. I was like, oh my gosh, you're a grown up. She started to experience anxiety again because of an event that took place in her life that triggered her. So I'm working with her again. I work with some families that I've been with for such a long time. I'm not willing to give them up, but my daughter is more or less running the show now, so to speak. She's
Okay.
the one, and they don't want me to take on too many clients because they know she has enough clients right now. I probably have 10 or 12 clients that I see, and then always training for something, and writing my book. So there's a lot going on. In August, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro,
Oh
which
my
was very exciting. Yes.
gosh.
And before that, a few months before that, I walked the Camino de Santiago, which was 500 miles. So that was a long trek. So I'm really into the athletic endeavors that I can take the time to do now because I know my daughter can run the practice and she is great. She's 43. She's a licensed psychotherapist. She's also board certified in applied behavioral analysis. She has ADD. She doesn't have the H part, or the impulsivity, which they took out of the DSM. And I'm not sure why, because it's definitely there.
Oh, oh yeah.
I can,
Along
I,
with the emotional dysregulation that's completely absent from
yeah,
the
I don't know why. I don't know why they took that out of the DSM. I think it's an important factor.
from what I understand, it had something to do with the fact that emotions are not measurable.
Yes, but the impulsivity is.
The impulse, I don't know why they did that. No,
I
that
don't
I have.
either because I mean to me that's a big factor. I back in the day, I'm trying not to be that way now. I try to stop myself, but oh, I'll do that. I'll sign a 50-mile run, I'll do a 50-mile, 100-mile run. I can do that. Whatever it is, which actually was a good thing back then. Now, not so much.
Well,
But
and I don't know about you, but like I didn't realize until I retired and started swimming 3 times a week and lifting weights and, becoming a semi non what static person.
yeah, sedentary, right.
Sedentary, yeah, a person. I actually started moving around and I realized how much easier it was to manage my ADHD.
Well, I was telling you that, now they call them sensory breaks, where if I am writing a treatment plan for a client with ADHD and we're going over it with the mom, I write out a whole schedule. Okay, if before they go to school, they have to either run, swim, do something in the morning, right? Or get to the playground early and run around at the playground because it actually calms you down to where you can sit down for whatever your threshold is. And then every 2 hours or so, you have to get up and do something else, whether it's
Mhm.
jumping jacks, go on a trampoline. Like I said, you have to move around. It makes you more grounded as a person with ADHD.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it allows, like, I know I have a really difficult time sitting still, and I usually have a fidget or something going on. Um, but like I used to sit through long meetings and it was,
IEP meetings, yes.
oh yeah, you know, the worst. And usually the ones that I was at, because by the time I finished, I was a central office administrator, so I only went to the contentious ones where there were lawyers and all kinds of stuff, right?
Right.
That took 3, 4 hours long. And I had to sit still during these. And I did know at that time, if I was exercising regularly, I was more able to sit through a meeting than if
Yes.
I wasn't.
And
So,
it does help, and that's what I tell parents. They've got to put that into the program for their kids. And
well,
even if
and
if
Have
we
you
go
ever noticed that they take that away from the kids?
Yes,
That's a
except I
punishment.
do have to say more recently, what they do is they have something called wiggles. And so they'll have, maybe an hour and a half of classroom time, and then they'll have the whole class stand up and they play like a video of a wiggles and they move around and they move their body around. They do a little bit of exercise and then they get back to work. And I'm not sure if that's actually, suggested by the school itself, or maybe the teacher herself has ADD or ADHD,
I love
whatever it
that.
is. I do too. I think, wow, this is great. All of these tools that they're using now, they're incredible.
Yeah. I just remember I would get so frustrated as a special ed advocate with people. The child has ADHD and you are taking his recess away from him.
Oh,
What what don't you understand here about why
I
that's
don't know. Well,
wrong?
because they're getting in trouble, and so behaviorally they think that's in the child's best interest to punish him, when in actuality they're making the problem worse.
I was gonna say they pay for it after recess when the
It's a
kid has not
shame. It's so
exercised.
shame.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the kids.
Yeah, I do too because a lot of teachers just don't understand. I think if teachers really, really completely understood ADHD as deeply as like you and I do, I don't understand it even as deeply as you do. But even when I was teaching, I didn't have that deep of an understanding of it. And I think I would teach differently. I think knowing now what I know now, I would go back and I would probably do some things differently.
I think you would be able to advocate for the child better because you would have a better understanding, right?
Absolutely. Um, I know that like I did a lot of work with trying to help my ADHD kids with mostly with trying to figure out the manifestation determination hearings. Like, and I don't know if you know what that is, the MDRs. When a kiddo gets in trouble in Michigan, we have what's called a manifestation determination hearing if they have a IEP. And so then they have to come and if it has to do, if it's a manifestation of their disability, then they go back to the school, whatever they did. So say they punched a teacher or something like that. And every time they'd say, "Don't tell me it's ADHD and that makes it a manifestation." This would be an argument that I would have that it's not a manifestation because he thought about it first, or this, or he can focus. This is, all these arguments about ADHD is not a viable uh, disability to be a manifestation for behaviors. And to that.
And well, I also think that, a lot of the schools, I'm not so sure now because I haven't attended an IEP for quite a while. But, when I did a few years ago, and for many years, a lot of the schools were misdiagnosing. So they would say the child had ADHD when clearly they were on the spectrum. Now, they may have had what used to be called Asperger's, but there is no Asperger's anymore. So they fit into the column one of having autism. There's three different levels of autism in the DSM. And, and so they don't understand socially what they're doing and have to be taught. But a lot of the schools, they don't want to give them the definition of autism because then they have to take more from the funding. I hate to say that, but it costs the school more money. So rather than giving them that diagnosis and kind of skirting around it, they won't give them the social skills that they need, or through speech therapy, where I know it can be given. And so then you have to fight with them eventually. What's interesting I find about the schools is that eventually they get the diagnosis if they would just be more open-minded in the beginning and look at all the evidence and data that's taken, and not be so I think that they truly believe that they're going to wear the parents down, and then the parents will not keep fighting for their child. That's what I believe.
And that's is such a sad view of the schools to have. And I remember when I was working as an administrator and how it was. really kind of viewed differently because my director and I, we actually tried to talk with the doctors. We tried to work with the advocates. Like I would call an advocate and say, "Hey, are you coming to the meeting this Friday? Because we really need to have you there." And so we worked very hard at bringing those oftentimes contentious relationships in for a closer look. And we oftentimes have people look at us like, "Wow, I've never had anybody like offer that or whatever." So yeah, I do know sometimes it's very contentious and sometimes it's a matter of I know for me as an administrator, sometimes I get hung up on I don't want to give this kid this label if it's not right, right? That was always like, we don't want to label a kid with something that's this severe if we are not absolutely certain. And so then we would want to bring the doctors in and we
Right.
would
And I
want to
was going
bring
to
the
say
other people in.
it's and
And
it's not your job to do that, but it is your job, like you were doing, to advocate for another professional to come in, do an
Mhm.
observation, collect data. Let's really see what's going on here, because a lot of times the people that are involved in this situation are too close to take an objective approach, but you know yourself something else is going on. I'm not sure what it is, but let's bring in another professional, and not just the test where they're checking boxes, but more of an observational approach at different times of the day. I used to rip apart people at meetings because I would say, "Oh, so you observe for 5 minutes at the same time, Monday through Friday. How is that helpful? Why
Mhm.
wouldn't you be observing on the playground? Why wouldn't you be observing during this time?" So,
Yeah, absolutely. I
they
think you
did.
and I probably would have been able to do some good
Yes,
work
help a
together.
lot of people, right?
Absolutely. But and our time is slipping away quickly, and I
Okay.
before it slips away, I gotta hear about this life and death thing because us ADHDers are more likely to die earlier because we're so impulsive and have all kinds of accidents. So I want to hear about this.
Well, it's interesting because throughout the years, I've, gone on many adventures, and most of them are like, "Hey, do you want to, hike across the John Muir Trail? It's 200 and, 35 miles. Sure, I'll do that. I've never backpacked, but I'll give it a try." So I trained for it. That This is just one example. And the person that I went with said, "Hey, Laurie, I don't want you to worry about it. I'm going to bring all the food. I'm going to, take care of all that. All the resupply is going to be where I picked you up." But unfortunately, they didn't pack enough food. This individual wanted to actually lose weight on the trip. And then I hadn't realized it. We were climbing peaks like 12,000, 14,000 feet elevation across the Sierra Nevada mountains. And I didn't know at the time that I was getting altitude sickness. I knew something was wrong with me. And I said, "Hey, there's something really wrong with me. I don't know what's going on." And that individual said, "Well," and I said, "Please take me to the ranger. I think I need to go to the ranger." And for me, I never asked to see a ranger. I hate hospitals and I just want to stay away from them. And this individual said, "No, I can't take you to the ranger because they'll blame me. You can hike out of the mountain on your own," which was, I think, a 13, 14-mile hike. And then you hitchhike when you get to the road, whatever it was. By the time I made it down, thank goodness, I made it down the trail, which was a very treacherous trail. I ended up hitchhiking, getting picked up by a big trucker, and I went to the doctor. I ended up having swelling of the brain, malnutrition, and infected blisters. But that's just one incident where I could have died. And there's several more that are in the book. I did go back with a friend and we hiked the whole John Muir Trail. And I ran into the person on the trail. And I was waiting for an apology, which I never got. And I said, "You left me out there and I could have died." And their response was, "Yeah, but look at you now. Isn't that great?" So there's quite a few different instances in the book. And I think, that's why Kilimanjaro was such a big deal to me, because I knew, going back to do the JMT, I had heard about Diamox, which is a medication that you can take that prevents you from the altitude sickness. And so for me, Kilimanjaro was just a test to, okay, I can do this. Now what's next?
Wow. Well, you know that ADHDers tend to be thrill seekers.
I know, because we don't overthink something. We have procrastinators and then we have, who are overthinkers and never do anything. And that's what I
Mhm.
try and tell my clients too. Which creates so much anxiety for them because they they overanalyze a situation, which prevents them from moving forward in life, where
Mhm.
we are risk takers. But look, if I hadn't been a risk taker, I wouldn't have my own practice. I wouldn't have been helping all of these families that are in need. So in some, it's a give and take.
Oh, like I was sort of dreading a cruise I'm going on because I wasn't real excited about the location. I'm getting more excited the closer we get to it. But I always thought when I went on a cruise, I was going to go on a cruise to the Caribbean, and I'm going to New England and Canada. So it kind of like, in the fall, which is fine. But I wasn't real gung ho about it. And then I talked to my aunt, and she said, well, there's a place where we can zip line across the fjords.
How cool. And I think there's so many things now that if you were to look at like day excursions that you could do that are available to you, I mean, you're going to have a great time.
Oh, I'm sure I am. But I was just like, oh yeah, dopamine. That right there. That's
That's
the
right. That's
dopamine.
right.
And I always tell people too, and I think you would agree with this when it comes to exercise, that even if you hate the exercise that you're doing, you have no choice.
There's
Dopamine
no
is going to
choice.
be dispensed into your body.
So when I go on a cruise, like something like that, because my husband likes to cruise, so it's a give and take again, I bring my jump rope. I just have to jump rope on the cruise ship because, like you said, I need that dopamine. I need it.
Absolutely. It's a big driver. And obviously you have found ways to get you have a dopamine drip going all the time in
Yes,
your
that's
life.
right. That's a good way to look at it. I never heard that. That is so funny.
Just, she's just like, keep it coming. Keep it coming. You want to run 50 miles? So I'll do that. Not a problem at all. I know I have a friend who said to me one day, I'm going to run across Michigan. Excuse me. I don't, I don't understand that. But I am amazed by you. And I have to say that I find you to be very inspiring.
Well, thank you.
So
I think we have a lot in common.
I agree. I agree. I also think that we could have a lot of fun together.
I agree. I will agree on that one as well.
So I always like to ask one more question so that my people get a chance to have the last word. And I try not to keep it a canned question. I try to make it individual as possible. I was wondering from you, because of your therapy background and all of the, psychological information that you have, along with your knowledge and use of physical activity in your daily regime, what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking, maybe exercise would be good for me? What would you say about that? Like, how would you get them to go?
To get somebody to jumpstart into it.
Yeah, to get them that, like if they're saying maybe I need to exercise a little bit, what would you do to get them going?
Well, with my clients, what I do is I have a kind of like a schedule because I write a motivational story for them that's personalized to kind of help them go in the direction they want to. So they're supposed to start the morning with that motivational story and then practice their different strategies that they use for anxiety or stopping themselves from engaging in a behavior that they want to see less of. And they have to mark that off so that when they come back into me, I can see that they followed their schedule. I make them very accountable. Now, in that schedule is going to be, depending on where they're at in their life, they have to walk for at least 20 minutes, and it would probably be 3 times a week. And we would pick something that they can be successful. I'm not going to pick something that they will not. I'm not going to say you need to go hike for an hour when I know they're not going to hike for an hour. But if you can leave your door and walk for 20 minutes and then come back, that is a huge start. So that will make them feel good about themselves, generate positive feelings for them, and then they'll be wanting to increase it. Let's say they are interested in hiking but never hiked. Well, then we will look up areas where maybe the Sierra Club is something they can join a hiking club, get a buddy to go with them one day on the weekend. So I start where they're at. so that they can be successful.
I love it. Perfect. That 20 minutes of getting up, getting out of the door, and going and walking, it does so many things. People think it's only my physical health that it's. No, first of all, getting outside for some people is a goal
Right.
just to get out the door every day, right?
Yeah.
And then to add a little bit of physical activity, which, we talked a little bit about what it does for your brain. It does a lot for your brain to have physical activity, breathing, all the good stuff. And it gives you time to center yourself and ground yourself. And I think you mentioned feeling grounded earlier too.
Yes.
And so when you take those three things, and there's much more to it, but those are just the three things I can think of. Um, it kickstarts you just because you can't help it.
And it's not going to last the entire day, but it will set the tone for the day.
Mhm.
And I think first thing in the morning, or, close to first thing in the morning, it really does set the tone for the day. And you feel good about yourself, getting that vitamin D, getting fresh air. And, one interesting thing, and even in my book, I put this in my book, is like, how can you sit on the bike for 7 hours and, don't you get bored? And I say, in my mind, it's never boring. There's constantly thinking about, I entertain myself for hours.
So
So
fun
there's,
in there.
yeah, so there's no problem with that. I don't have a problem with that.
Do you like make things up in your head? Do you like do
No,
some?
typically I go over different, sometimes I get my best ideas that way, whether I'm hiking or biking on my own. And I think, hey, you know what? Maybe this is a good idea for this situation, and just kind of play it out and how that would take place. And it's usually, like I said, they're my best ideas.
I want to thank you so much, Lori, for being on the show. It was a wonderful
I had a
conversation.
great time. Thank you very much for
I
having
did
me.
too. I think we may have some kindred spirit there. So, for our butterflies on the wall who are listening into our conversation, I hope they enjoyed everything and if they did and they want to come back for more, make sure that they like, subscribe, do all that stuff. And with that, we'll see you next time. Say bye.
Bye.